Well, good morning. Thank you very much for joining me on this video. I want to talk to you today about a principle called unjust enrichment, talking specifically about recovering commissions. You know, you work hard for your money and you deserve to be paid. And most cases you get paid. But there are occasions where maybe it's a devious seller or devious buyer, they put their heads together and they deliberately want to circumvent paying you any commission. What do you do to try and recover commission? Well, you've got the tool of a holdover clause, and I think we all understand that. And that says if somebody's shown the property during the currency of the listing, and that person ultimately buys within the holdover period, then you're entitled to go after them for your commission. But there are other circumstances that may not cover by the holdover clause. Let me give an example of something that happened to me personally very early in my real estate career. I was listing a property just outside of town, and it was in a time when most properties didn't sell. Very tough real estate market. Had the property listed for 3 months, it did not sell. I contacted the seller to see about extending the listing, and he said, well, I'm getting near the fall season, and my hope is to be able to build a new home, and I want to make sure I'm able to build a new home before I commit to selling this one. So he said, you know me, my word's good, check with me and show the property, and we'll move from there. So short time later, I had a potential buyer. I called him up and I said, would it be all right for me to show the property? Yeah, he said, in fact, the broker you work for showed it today already. I had no problem with him showing it, and you're welcome to show it too. So I made up an appointment. I showed the property, and the potential buyer really liked the property. We drafted up an offer. I met with the seller and went over the offer. Now, bear in mind, there's no listing at this point. Went over the offer, and everything was basically acceptable. He was about ready to sign it, and then he said to me, hold on a minute, Wayne, I better check with my builder and make sure there's going to be time to build the house so I'm not out in the cold. So he said, I will get back to you. Well, I waited a day, 2 days. I contacted him, haven't got a hold of my builder. I contacted him again. I kept on getting the runaround. After about 4 or 5 days, I called the builder myself. And I spoke to the builder, and the builder said, I don't know what the problem is. He's already signed a contract with me. In fact, I've already started construction. I called the seller back, and he was furious. You had no right to call my builder, and hummed and hawed, and basically refused to pay me any commission. Well, what I discovered was that he was not only a teacher at the local high school, but part of what he taught was law, and he was telling his students this case example on how he's going to burn the realtor for commission. That got me upset, so I hired a lawyer and decided to sue. Now, I couldn't sue him on the holdover clause because the buyer that I had presented the offer to didn't buy the property, didn't see it while it was listed. He saw it after the fact, but I had the consent to show it, verbally, by the way. So I sued him under this principle of unjust enrichment. And let me explain what the principle is. And the best way I can explain is by way of an illustration. Up in Muskoka, I believe it was Lake Mississauga, there was a section of the lake, a number of cottages, dozens and dozens of cottages that were water access. The cottagers got together and decided that they could put a road in. If each one of the cottagers contributed so much money, they could build a road and be road access instead of water access. They contacted all the affected cottagers, and most of them opted in and said, well, yeah, we want to participate. There were a few that selected not to. Well, they decided with the ones that were committed that they would go ahead, they built the road. And guess what? After the road was in place, the ones who said they weren't interested tapped into the road, started using the road without paying anything toward it. Now, the cottagers didn't own the land. It was Crown land that they built on, but they had spent the money to build the road, and so they sued the holdout cottagers, and they sued them under the principle of unjust enrichment. And the principle of unjust enrichment basically says if somebody is benefiting from your endeavor, then they have an obligation to pay, otherwise they would be unjustly enriched. It went to court, and the judge said if you were planning on not using the road, that's fine, but if you're going to use the road, you have an obligation to pay not only the cost, your share of the cost of building the road, but your yearly cost of maintaining the road. And he forced them to pay that under the principle of unjust enrichment. So, my situation, I had the permission to show the property. I showed the property. I procured the offer. The seller basically accepted my offer. He sold the property on the terms that I brought in to the buyer I brought in. He was unjustly enriched. My efforts gave him a benefit and he didn't pay for it. So under this, I was successful in suing him for the commission. And I don't often sue, but I did that because I spent a lot of time and energy building a good name in the community. I didn't want him using as a showcase how that the realtor doesn't deserve to be paid. The ultimate ending to the story, if you might be, is that the lawyer basically charged me the full amount of the commission. I ended up with nothing. In fact, he sent me a letter saying my fees were $35 more than the commission you earned. I'll waive the $35. So basically, he kept all the fees. And that's the one thing you have to keep in mind, is sometimes, and maybe often, a lawsuit doesn't make sense, because when you get into the legal costs, maybe it eats up as much or more than you're going to gain from the settlement. But sometimes it's just necessary to take a stand. What I want to leave you with, though, is this principle of unjust enrichment. You know the principle of the holdover clause. You don't often sue under it, but you've got it there. Now you've got another weapon in your arsenal. Keep that in mind. Just tuck it in the back of your mind. Unjust enrichment. And if you've done something where somebody's deliberately trying to sidestep their obligation to pay you, it may well be, even if the holdover clause doesn't apply, it may well be that you're entitled to commission under this principle of unjust enrichment. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I'll talk to you again very soon.